Jesus and Mary Chain is an interesting reference and one that we may come back to shortly. Let's talk about the new Napalm Death album. It's called Throes of Joy in the Jaws of Defeatism, and it's set to be released September 18th, 2020. Tell me about Napalm Death 2020. Tell me about this new album.
Well, I mean, we've done 16 albums now, so we're trying not to repeat ourselves because we think that would be just too easy, like making the same album over and over again. So we're a very spontaneous band, we're not a tick box exercise, it's a vibrant, spontaneous band, so similar to what we just spoken about in the last question. There's lots of stuff going on. There's the traditional siege, deep wound, infest, septic death, whatever you want to, whatever stuff you want to pull out, mixed with the Celtic frost, massacre, death, mixed with Sonic Youth, Killing Joke, Einstürzende Neubauten, Throbbing Gristle, all that kind of stuff. It's all in there. There's all cues from different stuff with the napalm twist, So that's what we are. I think the influences that I've mentioned and many more than that I could mention have been there for decades in the band. But as time goes on, as you might expect, what does move forward is the chemistry as songwriters in the band, because I think all the influences tend to amalgamate a little bit better as time goes on, So whereas a few albums ago you might say, well, yeah, that's the traditional napalm song. This is another type of napalm song. This is the proto-industrial song. This is that song. Now, those elements tend to be mixed more in the track. So yeah, that's really it.
So as we're speaking today, it's a day before the album is officially released, and you've released 3 singles from the album so far. Backlash, Just Because, Amoral, and A Belly Full of Salt and Spleen. Backlash, Just Because reminds me a lot of other Napalm songs. There's a very strong Celtic frost kind of groove, very pounding, very heavy. Amoral is interesting. It has something of a post-punk kind of rhythm to it. Would you say that's fair?
Yeah, absolutely. I would not argue with that at all. In fact, you do wonder sometimes, because obviously all music's subjective and people hear things differently as well, so you might write a song which you think is one way, and then a few people might comment on it, and the comparisons they make are completely different to what you were thinking in the first place, which is the beauty of music. But yeah, I mean, in terms of that, yeah, definitely. Killing Joke in particular was really big for us. Because Geordie's guitar work and stuff like that was very, very unique. And, I think it's a good reference point. If you want to make original music, original extreme music, or whatever other music you want to make, it's good to have pioneers like that to take a bit of a cue from. Obviously we always take those influences, but we put a napalm twist on them. So I would offer that they're not just carbon copies of those influences. They do have the napalm twist to them.
I mean, in fairness, a lot of that napalm twist is your vocals, right? Once you hear Barney, immediately it's napalm, right?
Maybe. I mean, again, I can't really say that. I mean, that's up for other people to really say. I mean, I just do what I do, and what comes out comes out. I don't know if people might hear it sometimes and maybe think it's somebody else. I mean, I couldn't say. I don't really know. But
yeah. So let's talk about the last single that you guys released, A Belly Full of Salt and Spleen. Tell me a little bit about the genesis of the song musically, and then we can talk about some of the themes that are in the lyrics.
Yeah. So the music was, I mean, you might argue that it's basically the most left field experimental track on the album, although we have done tracks like this before. It's not a new thing for us, we're not reinventing our own wheel. But again, as albums go on, you push the barriers a little bit more, and I think A Belly Full of Salt and Spleen musically definitely does that. For one thing, the percussion that's in there is from basically homemade percussion equipment, which consisted of like pieces of rubbish, materials that we found around the studio. So some old oil drums and some old rubbish bins, steel bins, and some screws, some industrial screws, the big screw parts and stuff, and basically semi-constructed and then just basically bashed, recorded. So there's a lot of that stuff going on. But then there's also, it's very ambient. A lot of the sort of guitar lines in there, there's a lot of electronics and ambience, and it's very, very, very multi-layered for what you would think for a song that Napalm Death would do, which is usually very blunt, very, very straight up. So yeah, it's just a very expansive song, and vocally, I'm very confident as a vocalist. I'm not afraid to try stuff. I mean, of course, some stuff, unless it hits the points, the abrasiveness, the extremity. If it doesn't hit those, then I'm not going to do it. But that doesn't mean to say that within those parameters, I can't stretch myself out a little bit. And the really ironic thing is these things that kind of test me a bit more vocally, you might argue, they take the least time to do. I mean, I recorded that song. That song, vocal layers wise, probably got 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 vocal layers on it. And it literally took me probably a couple of hours, 3 hours. So it's once you get into the flow, and again the spontaneity gets going in the studio, you can do a lot.
So you mentioned the noise element that's always present in Napalm. As you're talking about hitting on these pieces of discarded metal and old, were they tin drums?
Well, there was a couple of like small fabrication factories, that do metal work and stuff, and they'd obviously dumped, left it in the backyard of where the studio complex was, or nearby, and it didn't seem as if anybody wanted it anymore. It was looked as if it was going to be thrown out or recycled. So it was just lying around, in a couple of places outside the studio complex. I mean, I wasn't there when they recorded it, but hopefully they didn't just steal it, and hopefully it wasn't being used, or they weren't going to, whoever's factory they weren't going to recycle them, and obviously to their benefit or whatever. I don't know, but.
Well, they're immortalized now, so
sure they are. You can't take them off now. They're on there, so.
But that noise element is very Neubauten, and I think, Napalm, in addition to metal and hardcore and grind and all the other influences that you guys draw from, always had a very strong noise influence.
Definitely, and that in itself offers many possibilities, because when you get into the kind of messing with the ambience and stuff, and the very sort of big pot of stuff that can offer, it's only beneficial to the band, to do that. You can, your ideas, I find, increase tenfold, when you start getting into that stuff. It offers a world of possibilities.
There's a video released for A Belly Full of Salt and Spleen, and I think now would be a good time to talk about the lyrical concept behind the song.
So yeah, basically, the whole sort of general thrust of the album is talking about the other, people that have been marginalised and dehumanised, groups of people, which is nothing new, but now governments are kind of employing these tactics. So as it had moved to that level, I thought it was quite urgent actually to expose this stuff, obviously be the antithesis. So one of the ways that manifested itself in terms of the ideas was, we have a situation with refugees, coming into Europe and into the UK on boats, and it's an incredibly dangerous crossing across the English Channel, which is one of the busiest shipping lanes in the world. And the indigenous population in the UK, a part of it is conditioned to very much reject these people and kind of sort of view them, and I don't think it's too strong to say that they're viewed as less than human, sometimes just garbage or whatever, and I just find that just inhumane. So I wanted to do a video that sort of really put forward these ideas of bodies washing up on beaches, which does happen. And then you've got kind of a beach scene with people playing on the beach and stuff, and not even noticing these drowned refugees on the beach, and so kind of just having regular beach holidays. And so that kind of feeds into that desensitization of the plight of peoples, So I think it worked out really well, and I think it definitely exposes that idea for what it is.